Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Stubby.
Well, it's very nice to be here with all of you and visit with you. Loy, I'm glad you had me down here. Us fellows like to get out of the state of Indiana every now and then and kind of check on you down here to see how you're doing. I did want to say that we've got some very nice dignitaries here today that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to do that. But first, I want just to call your attention to this coat that I'm wearing, which is a gold coat, and it doesn't look too bad, does it, ladies? Does that look all right? Huh? I dress up good when I come out here. You know, it's not easy being a sex symbol for fertilizer. Loy's a fine young man. All of you know him. He's a good feller, and he knows a lot about a lot of things. But Loy is what I call a middleman. And I call him that because he likes to watch Cher on television. Yeah, he does. Boy, isn't she something else? I don't hardly blame him. There's one woman hadn't got a thing to wear, and she wears it. Loy said what he attracted him to her, said she's got a pretty navel. I don't know about that. I'll put mine up against her. No, that won't come out right. Withdraw that, will you? Well, I brought my speech over early and give it to Loy, and I said, now, Loy, you go through this speech and you cut out any of the parts that you think are dull. And so, in conclusion, no, I'm going to go along just a little bit farther than that. I do, Ed forgot to tell you, I do a radio program that's on about 70 radio stations every day across the country. And I do a little talk program there. And I started out with a little quiz every day to sort of get everybody interested. And a little quiz like, what's the difference between Uncle Sam, a rooster, and an old maid? And, of course, the answer to that is Uncle Sam says Yankee Doodle-Doo, a rooster says Cocky Doodle-Doo, and the old maid says any old Doodle-Doo. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Coming down through here, your traffic is something else. I was driving across the country here, and I had a Lincoln, and some guy was right back of me in a Plymouth, and then there's another fellow back of him in a Corvette, and another guy back of him in a Mustang. I come to a crossroad, and I had to stop real quick. Some guy came through, and we all run together, and I got it parked out here. If anybody here would like to buy a Lincoln Plymouth or a Swintang. But you have to watch the traffic around here. By golly, say, I run into one of your state patrolmen here. Say, I'll tell you, he was something else. I guess I was going a little too fast. And he was a wealthy one. He had owned his own speed trap. And, he was something else. He pulled me over to the side, and he come up there. He had me on radar. And, you know, did you ever think about this? Radar spelled backwards is radar, which means they can get you gone and coming. It don't make any difference. Well, he come over to the car, and he started writing me a ticket immediately. And all the time he's writing this ticket, he kept batting at some little flies there, you know, and blowing them out of the way. And he said, what are those things? Well, I said, officer, up there in Indiana we got them. And I said, they're little flies that fly around back of a horse. I said, we call them circle flies up there. And he just ripped out that ticket and handed it to me. He said, you ain't insinuating, are you, that I'm a horse's rear end? Well, I said, no, sir, officer, I'm not. But I said, you can't fool them flies. He went ahead and gave me the ticket. Anyhow. But you know, by gollies, we are coming down here. Of course, coming down from the Midwest, they flew me down here on Rainbow's plane. They got an airplane there, and I'm telling you, that's the oldest plane I ever saw in my life. Guys, it's got outdoor toilets on it. I've sat in some drafty ones in my time, but that's ridiculous. But you know, you get into some of the darndest situations in airplanes. I got on this big airliner one time, and I got mad. Written on the door of the restroom there, it said, "Do not flush toilets over cities." Well, I got that pilot out there, and I pointed to that, and I said, "Why us farmers?" I was on a plane one day, and like I say, you meet some interesting people. There was this professor on there. And he was from Harvard, one of them Eastern schools, and he was a smart son of a gun. I could see he was educated far beyond his intelligence. And he was sitting on there. We introduced ourselves to each other. I told him I was an Indiana farmer, and he told me he was a professor. And we sat there and talked. Pretty soon he said, "Let's play a game." Well, I said, "All right, I like games." I said, "What do we play?" Well, he said, "I'll tell you. I'll ask you a question. If you can't answer it, you give me $1. And he says, "You ask me one. If I can't answer it, I'll give you $1. Now, I said, "Hold it, back up." I said, you're a college professor. I'm just a farmer. I said, "You've got to be a lot smarter than I am." Well, he said, "I never thought of that." Yeah, he said, "I would be smarter." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He says, "You ask me a question. If I can't answer it, I'll give you $1. And then he says, "If you can't answer my question," he said, "you just give me 50 cents. Well, I said, "That's better odds." Well, he said, "All right, ask me a question." Well, I said, "All right, Professor, now answer this." I said, "What's got 3 legs and flies?" Man, that professor grabbed his head and he thought and thought. And he went down his bug list and everything. And he said, "Say, I can't answer that." He said, "I don't know." He said, "Here's your $1." Well, I said, "All right." I said, "Now you ask me one." Well, he said, "You got yourself a good question there. I'd like to know the answer to that." He said, "What has got 3 legs and flies?" I said, "Darned if I know, Professor. Here's your 50 cents. I'll teach him the monkeys us farmers. We have some guys that like to drink just a little. My grandpa, he took on quite a bit of that stuff up there. He was a hard-working man, but that's one thing. If there's one fault he had, that was it. And I know he used to get, when he'd drink like that, we all didn't like it. He'd get lost. And I know one night, Grandma called me and said, "Come on over." Said, "Grandpa's been drinking and they can't find him." Well, I went over there, and we looked around and we found him. He was laying there in a hog pen, sound asleep, had his arm around an old sow. And they looked so peaceful laying there. And Grandpa was mumbling in his sleep. Said, "Grandma, I didn't know you had all them buttons on the front of your nightgown." And the boys tried to break him of that drinking. And I know one night they pulled a trick on him. They was at the tavern playing cards. And just before Grandpa got ready to go home, one of the boys slipped out there and turned the saddle on his horse around backwards, tightened her up. Now, we don't know how, but some way or another, Grandpa got on that horse and he got home. But when he got home, he was crying. He says, "Grandma, it's just terrible." She said, "What happened?" He said, "One of the boys cut my horse's head off." She said, "You don't mean to tell me." He said, "It was awful." He said, "I had to ride all the way home with my hand over his windpipe." We got one lady explaining this stuff to her husband back there. You folks laugh at it today, figure it out tomorrow. I ain't got time to wait around here. But a lot of folks want to know where I get my material from, for speeches and radio and things like that. Well, Actually, it's from people like I meet here today. You'd be surprised what I've already heard here today. We parked our car out there a while ago, and some guy come around the corner of it and hit his shin on the bumper. I got some material off of him, I'll tell you. But it isn't the Reverend, I'll tell you. That wasn't. I got to clarify that. Reverend Page, it wasn't you, talk. But I get my material off of folks back there in our area. We've got a lot of people there that's fun. Now, we got Uncle Charlie there. Uncle Charlie, you ought to see, 96 years old, and he just has fun with everybody. Oh, he has a lot of laughs. And he went in to see Doc Gill the other day, and he said, say, Doc, he said, I'd like to have my sex drive lowered. Well, the doctor couldn't believe it. He says, you're 96 years old, want to have your sex drive lowered? He said, yeah. He says, it's all up here. So they sent Charlie into the hospital. They got him in there in this hospital, and they got one of them hospital gowns on him. Now, have you ever had one of them on? Aren't they a lovely creation? That hospital gown, that's the original miniskirt. In front, they're rated G, and in the back, X. Oh, yeah, that's they come in 3 lengths. Short, shorter, and don't reach for the cookie jar. Oh. But they got him in there, and Uncle Charlie in there for his 150,000-mile checkup. And Charlie says, while I'm in here, Doc, he says, if you have to operate on me, he said, put in some of them goat glands and monkey glands. Well, Doc said, you don't want none of that stuff. Yeah, I do. He said, I want some of them goat glands and monkey glands. Doc said, what for? Well, he said, in case I bump into something, I might want to monkey around. But you know, it's amazing how we try to get a little free medical advice out of our doctor. If we catch him on the street or somewhere at a party or anything, we're all guilty of this. Coming down the church steps last Sunday morning, I got about halfway down. Doc Gill was following me there. I stopped right there and I said, say, Doc, I got this pain in my hip back here. I said, now what causes something like that? He said, drop your pants. I said, right here on the church steps? He said, you asked me right here on the church steps. Oh, fine. But then, you know, we've got a drugstore up there, too. This guy that runs it, a fellow by the name of Basal Metabolism. And I went in there one day and I said, say, Basal, I says, how's the best way to take castor oil without tasting it? Well, he said, I've got to think about that just a little bit. He said, to tell you what, he said, I was getting ready to have a lemonade here. I said, why don't you join me? We'll think about it. I said, all right. So he fixed us up a couple, and we sat there and drank them. I said, Basil, I got to go here. I said, have you figured out yet the best way to take, castor oil without tasting it? He said, well, you didn't taste that, did you? I said, you mean it was in that lemonade? He said, yeah. I said, it wasn't for me, it was for my grandson. Boy, aren't these grandsons, kids, great. I tell you, I got mine. I took my one grandson to see Santa Claus this past season, and if that wasn't fun. I set him up on Santa Claus's lap and stepped back, my chest puffed out with pride, And he talked to Santa Claus, and then he got down off of Santa Claus's lap and come running back to me. He said, Grandpa, said, that Santa Claus is from the North Pole. Well, I said, how'd you know that? Well, he said, I could smell that antifreeze on his breath. That son of a gun had her set for about 32 below, I think. But I think kids today, I don't believe we'd have too much trouble with kids today if they had more to do. We give them more responsibilities, right? They don't work enough. Now, you guys out there, you remember how hard we worked on the farm when we was kids? By golly, I bet I was 12 years old before I knew my name wasn't Get Cobbs. I'll wait on you folks. I'm in no hurry. But you know, it's a funny thing. Kids today, we don't give them any kind of responsibilities. What I'm saying to you is, I don't believe we'd have any trouble with kids today if they had to chop wood to keep the TV set going. But it's hard to get kids to do anything. You know it? I mean, they tell me if a mother wants to have a good, quiet, peaceful time to herself in the evening, it's very simple. All she's got to do is wash the dishes. There won't be anybody bother you. Huh? Right? My daughter walks around primping all the time. Oh, my golly. Says she's looking for the perfect man. Well, I said, forget it, honey. Your mother got the last one. Somebody asked me out there if I was in the service. Yes, I was in World War II. Y'all remember that? It was in all the papers. Some of you guys were in on that, was you? Wasn't that something else? What was that they used to give us there? Something fed us, something on a shingle. Can't remember that. You remember that? It was kind of like hash. Only was looser. But I never will forget when I went in. Actually, there was 4 of us went in at the same time up there. Me and 3 MPs. I still got splinters under my fingernails where they drugged me off of the back porch. I didn't want to go, you know. But they all took us down to this place there where they was going to induct us in, and the guy right ahead of me says, "You can't take me." He said, "I got bad eyesight." And he brought his wife along to prove it. Boy, she was a homely woman. I'm going to tell you something. She was so ugly, she had to slip up on the dipper to get a drink, you know. And he met her, I don't know how he met her, but I met her on the street one day. I couldn't believe it. I went running up to her, and when I got right to her, she turned around. I said, "Oh." I said, "I'm sorry, but you look like Helen Brown." And she said, "Well, I don't look much better in blue." She was a bow-legged girl. You don't see many of them anymore, but I'm telling you, she was bow-legged. You couldn't believe it. She could walk down a bowling alley with a game going on. She got that way from hitchhiking rides on oil trucks, you know. But we got in there, and I tell you, the day I went in, my wife and mother-in-law come down to see me off on the train, and you never heard such bawling and squalling in your life. They thought they never would get me to quit. But now a lot of you guys got in down, and any of you get seasick when you got off the ocean. Gosh, I didn't. Not till I got out of the harbor. Oh, then it hit, you know. The big waves, and that ship was a-tossing and rolling, and I headed right for the rail. And when I got there, there was already a bunch of farmers standing there. They were yelling, "New York!" I believe that's what it was. I don't know. But one night I was hanging unusually far over the rail, and the captain come down. He said, "Hey, Stubby," he said, "is the moon up yet?" Well, I said, "Man, have I swallowed it, it did." He said, "What's the matter with you, boy?" He said, "You got a weak stomach?" I said, "No, man, I'm throwing it as far as anybody here." But one thing about it, when we got into battle, by golly, I didn't run. I passed some guys that were running. One thing about it, you guys know when you're in service, no matter what was wrong with you, they always done the same thing. They give you them big yeller pills. And oh, they were so bitter, I'll tell you, you just couldn't stand it. Just tasted terrible. And I wasn't feeling too good when I got out, and I was on the way home. Now, you remember how train travel was during the war. You couldn't get a seat on the train. People were sitting on suitcases in the aisles. Of course, us servicemen, we had to stand up because we was riding half fare. Remember that? And I was standing up there, and I was getting ready to take a pill. I was in the Navy, and I had one of them, only one pocket in the sailor suit, and that's up here. Now, sitting right down below me was an old boy there that he was asleep in his seat, and he had his head laid back, and his mouth was wide open. So I was getting that pill out of my pocket up here, and that darn thing slipped out of my hand, went right in that old boy's mouth. And at the same time, the train went around a curve, and his suitcase fell off his rack up above and hit him in the stomach. Well, now that old boy come out of it, a wall in his eyes, you know, and tasted in his mouth. I said, old timer, I said, when that suitcase fell down there and hit you in the stomach, did it hurt you? He said, well, he says, I don't know. But he said, from the taste in my mouth, danged if I don't believe it, busted my gall. One thing we did learn in the service the guy could kind of use, and that was that karate stuff. I learned that. You know, that's that deal where you jump in the air and you go, ah! And I found out why they do that. That scares your opponent half to death to start with, and he runs. Gets you out of a lot of fights. Well, I lived in Chicago after I got out of service, and you know how tough it is in Chicago. My golly, well, my Avon lady was Joe Frazier. And by gollies, I was going down to the radio station one morning early, and I see this guy coming after me, creeping up on me. He was some guy, he had a gun in one hand and a knife in his teeth, and he was carrying a little bucket of acid. Well, I knew this guy wasn't going to a 4-H meeting, you know. So I waited on him. I said, I'm going to give him some of this karate before he gets me. So I slipped around the corner of a building, and I waited on him. And when he come around there, just as he got there, I jumped in the air, and I went, ha! Son of a gun was dead. You know, it's wonderful to see the ladies here today. You play such an important part in the farming operations today. And a lot of people ask me about my wife. One fellow says, now, are you married? I said, yes. He said, how do you get along with your wife? Well, I said, it's very simple. I have two ways I get along with her. First, I said, I let her think she's getting her own way. And second, I give her her own way. No use monkeying around with that. But my wife and I'm telling you, we got along real good when we were first married. But on the way out of the church, how many of you men out here have been married 25 years or longer? Raise your hands. I want to see them. You poor son of a gun. I'm gonna have a moment of silence for you. It's the first you've had. Gosh, I'll tell you, I think it's wonderful. Now, I'll tell you, I was talking to a bachelor earlier. What was it, Mitt Robinson? Where is he at? Huh? Where are you, Robbie? Well, is this it? Right down there. I see, yeah. And, I'll tell you, we was talking about that, and he likes it, you know. Well, his father before him was. But I was asking him why he never got married, and he said, I'll tell you. He said, I'd rather want something all my life and never get it than to have something all my life and never want it. But you ladies, bless your hearts, you do the greatest thing to stay beautiful like you are. It's wonderful. My wife, now you guys, all the women down here, do they do that wrinkle cream bit? Oh my gosh. My wife, elbow cream every night. She goes through this bit, rubs it on, knee cream, ankle cream. I got to put ashes in my bed to keep her from sliding out. And you know what else she does? When your wife do this, she puts a big gob of that vanishing cream stuff on her face and rubs it into her ears and her eyeballs and everything. And then what does she do? Comes up to me and says, kiss me. Any of you women ever kiss cold cream with hormones in it? We had Halloween not very long ago, and that's the kids come around and ring the doorbell, trick or treat deal. And our doorbell rang, and my wife went to the door. And she was wearing a mud pack, and she had a chin strap on there, and she had her hair up in curlers, and she was wearing a sweatsuit. She opened that door. That kid gave her candy. But she's, you can find out about a lot of women, subjects in magazines, how to get along with your wife and all that stuff and everything, anywhere today. But I was in a barber shop up home there the other day, and the barber made a statement. He said, men, he says, you can't trust a woman with brown eyes. Oh man, as soon as I got down out of that chair, I went right home. When I got there, my wife was asleep on the davenport. So I raised up her eyelid. And I said, aha, Brown. About that time, Brown came out from behind the davenport and said, how'd you know I was here? Now, my wife don't take to these newfangled things very much. She, just not at all. Any of you guys got a wife that's got cold feet? No. I know one night my wife had hers sticking out from under the cover, about 3 feet out there. I said, how come you got them sticking out under the cover? She said, I don't want them cold things in bed with me. I decided to get an electric blanket. And she says, no, said, I'm scared to death of them things. All them wires in there, said it might short circuit and I'd blow a fuse or something. I said, no, they've got that all figured out now. Everything's all right. And she didn't know. She's if my wife was a man, she'd wear both belt and suspenders. She don't want to go out for this stuff. Now, so I finally got one anyhow. And men, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to buy an electric blanket, get one with dual control. Because that's the only way you're going to get along. My wife, we got that thing. She still didn't like it. She's scared of it. So we put that thing on the bed, and she crawled in there and turned hers way up, I turned mine down. And we went to sleep. Now, the thing I didn't know was, before she went to bed that night, she put a ham in the oven to cook slow all night. Well, I'll tell you, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I sat right straight up in bed. I smelled the air. I looked over at her. I said, honey, you all right? She said, yes. Well, I said, turn over. I think you're done on that side. But they do pull some cute things. Now, if you guys got your wife go through this craft deal where they make flower arrangements and paint, and my wife was making stuff out of newspaper. She'd make a little tree and a little hat and so forth, and she made a nightgown out of newspaper one time. That got me in more trouble, and I was innocent of the whole thing. But she wore it to bed there, And I was just laying there, and I just punched her. I said, roll over, I want to look at the funnies. Now, I'm going to tell you something, though. I talk about my wife, but believe me, I'm unusual in show business because I still got the same wife I started with 35 years ago. And she's the greatest woman in this world. She is really a dandy. I don't know whether she feels that way about me or not. We had our anniversary not very long ago, and I got a card from her. It was addressed to occupant. But she's something else. But to add insult to injury a lot of times when I'd go out the door, because I have to leave a lot dressed up, she's sitting there with the kids, as I'd go out the door, I'd say to her, "Good night, mother of three," she got tired of that. She broke me of that. I went out the door one night and said, "Good night, mother of three." She yelled back, says, "Good night, father of one." That'll break you from sucking eggs right there now, folks. Well, folks, it's just a pleasure whenever I can get down here to entertain you folks and talk with you. And, folks, I'll tell you, you've been so nice to this old Indiana country boy. I'm very happy to come down here. I hope we can do this again sometime. And I want to leave you with a little thought on thankfulness before I go, because I do have a lot to be thankful for. And I'm sure you do too. So I hope you'll remember me for this. You don't need a bank full of cash to be thankful. Be thankful you have what you do. And don't envy your neighbors the fruits of their labors. Your fortune rests solely with you. Here's cause for thanksgiving, the fact that we're living where freedom of enterprise reigns, where all may aspire to what they desire, each welcome to what he attains. If you have what's needed, and it can't be impeded by a lack of courage or skill, no blessing is greater, so thank your Creator and ask his guidance and will. One thing to remember, in June or November, or whenever you feel thankfulness most, there's no earthly power can dictate the hour or how you give thanks to your host. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.